Welcome to today's episode of the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It is Friday, November 29th, and as we round into the final month of 2024, there is one name we have yet to check off the list. Taylor Sheridan, actor turned television creator, is back with a new show. This is not our first conversation addressing Sheridan, as we've reviewed Yellowstone, Special Ops Lioness, 1883, 1923. What else am I missing?
Lawman Bass Reeves.
Oh, yeah.
I watched Mayor of Kingstown. The only show we haven't done that he's created has been Tulsa King. Everything else we have reviewed. And again, aside from Mayor of Kingstown, you've reviewed everything else. So that leads to my first question. Overall, what is your opinion on Taylor Sheridan shows?
I believe that they are a commodity of diminishing returns.
Oh, okay.
As in, he is being stretched so thin. Whatever you think of his shows and his work, he's undeniably taken the TV industry by storm, much like a Ryan Murphy, J.J. Abrams, Kurt Sutter type.
I remember at one point I called him, Taylor Sheridan, the hardest working man in show business. I think in our 1883 podcast or something like that. Yeah.
The thing is, I loved 1883, but that was done, I think it was one of his first shows after Yellowstone.
Yes.
And it seemed like he was just filled with creative ideas, and he created that premise, he created that world, he did a bunch of research. But as all these deals came from Paramount Plus being like, make this, make this, make this.
Right. As a quick reminder, in February 2020, he signed a multi-year pact with a deal that covered multiple projects that he was going to be working on.
And that's typical. Like most show creators do that. But to the point where he's writing every single episode, directing a ton of them as well, it just becomes a problem when you get to something like Special Ops Lioness, not particularly your forte, but suddenly you're writing about women in Afghanistan, creating crews and working with sleeper terrorist cells and stuff like that. That's getting a long way away from like your work on Sons of Anarchy and Minds MC and other like Kurt Sutter projects, right?
Right, yeah. And
he's really into doing like Westerns and like middle America, bringing them up by your bridges, like that type of work. And so Landman is sort of a return to form. And there are two things that are nice about Landman. One is it's not just him. He's a co-creator on this show.
Yes.
With another guy named like Christian Wallace, right?
Yes, Christian Wallace. He's the one that narrated Boomtown, the podcast that this show is based off of.
And that's the second good thing, is that it's not 100% in Sheridan's mind. The show itself is an adaptation.
Yes.
So he may have written every single episode, but he has a lot of source material to pull from. And so those are two very encouraging facts. Then you jump into the cast of this thing and you see even more names than you would ever, like John Hamm, Billy Bob Thornton, Demi Moore. It's like a cast of Fargo.
Yeah,
literally. There are a lot of crossovers. And even in the first episode, you had Michael Pena showing up as a guest star. You had the guy from Minds MC or Sons of Anarchy, which
Emilio Rivera, I think his name is.
He was the guy running the patch crew. Ali Larder from Heroes back in the day. So Landman, if you just judge it by the title, it sounds like a superhero show. Like you think Swamp Thing or She-Hulk, One Punch Man.
Yeah.
But really what it is it's like Mayans MC, Breaking Bad, Fargo, Friday Night Lights.
Well, it's actually interesting you say Friday Night Lights because they got Stephen K, the third episode. He directed episodes like The Shield, Friday Night Lights, Sons of Anarchy,
or the movie
Punisher. I think it was the TV show.
Because Billy Bob Thornton was in the movie.
Yes, right, exactly. And I also just want to mention that this poster of Landman is so much like his other work, 1883. It's like the same exact poster.
You're right. The smokestack is in just a different direction, but very similar.
If there's one thing that I think this shows, it's that he likes fire in his posters, but also Sheridan likes to have posters that have events happen in the first episode, because that chariot fire was in like the first few minutes of 1883, right?
I would say the intros are also very similar. If you go back to the intro where they have the, I guess like the slow, artistic type of faces being shown, it's very similar to this. And then Sam Elliott, I think, is the one who sees his house burn down in the first few episodes of 1883.
Yeah.
In this, you get an explosion at the very end of the episode that's very similar fire-wise.
So just really fast on how they got Billy Bob Thornton, he was in 1883, and then it's Taylor Sheridan when he was doing two scenes. I think he was in episode 2. He had dinner with him one night and was like, look, man, I would love it because I'm working on this new show, Landman. Billy Bob Thornton ended up agreeing to do it, and it just seems like Taylor Sheridan, he runs into these strange, lucky situations, because if you remember, Isabel May auditioned for Mayor of Kingstown, and that's how she ended up getting the main role off of 1883, so it's like a domino effect. with Taylor Sheridan almost.
Yeah, and I would say Billy Bob Thornton, I wasn't as big a fan as a lot of people were of his character in Fargo. But in this, it's different. It feels like he's playing less of a mercurial, enigmatic person, and what he is. He is the landman.
Right.
He is a manager. He's a fixer. He's a negotiator between the billionaire oil tycoons and the patch teams working the rigs, as well as containing any illegal shit that's going down and the blowback because of that illegal shit.
Right, because Tommy Norris, he's fictional. He's not in the podcast, but the podcast isn't really about a family. All the characters, I think, are things that Taylor Sheridan had just kind of made up. But
right, and it's a badass premise.
Yeah.
Like, there's no doubt that when you meet Billy Bob Thornton in the first scene, and he's doing sort of a Breaking Bad scene where he's already been kidnapped by the cartel and they're wanting money from him, and then he explains to them as if they're school children why their business runs the way it does and why he's actually helping them by doing exactly what he's already been doing by helping the oil rigs, and how they don't want the feds poking around and neither does he. And so they let him go. And so I think it's really effective, and it seemed like it was kicking off the series. Then you do get into the stuff with his family, and that's where it becomes Taylor Sheridan's sitcom, with his wife and his daughter and his son and stuff. His son has a very interesting storyline, but when you're concentrating just on Billy Bob Thornton trying to navigate through his love life and his daughter's love life, that's where the show can slow down on you. Sheridan has this proclivity for doing compelling narratives with cowboy-type figures.
Yes, obviously.
And I feel like that is what Billy Bob Thornton is embracing in this. Even though he's not technically a cowboy, he does wear the cowboy hat. He doesn't wash himself regularly. He drinks beer. He smokes cigars, and he's unapologetic about all that shit.
I found it really funny because Billy Bob Thornton, he's supposed to be like this manly character. However, he is a self-described brony at 69 years old.
Well, they also have him taking testosterone shots to try to
do they really?
maintain his aggressiveness, his manliness, as you put it. The first 3 episodes, let's run down those real quick. The first one's called Landman.
Yep.
Next one's called Dreamers and Lovers, something he says to his daughter. Actually, yeah, it was to his daughter. And then in the third episode, Hell Has a Front Yard. Tommy is dealing with all these crises that are happening at the same time. First, there's he's got his boss, Monty, played by John Hamm, and they're both trying to cover up a story about one of their planes that was stolen by the cartel. And then it crashed. It had a bunch of drugs on it. And so they have to bury that story before it gets out to the public, and the feds start sticking their noses where they shouldn't. And then just when that happens, that's when the oil rig blows up at the end of the first episode. That's where his son Cooper is working. He's the only survivor of that patch group. And the aftermath of that leads to some crazy legal woes, his broken families for all the people who just died. And Billy Bob Thornton even loses half his finger. Tommy loses half his finger because he goes in to try to make sure the valve is completely cut off, and he misses the valve when he's hitting it, and he ends up just knocking.
I was going to ask how that happened. Yeah, because I saw like the second episode where doesn't he pull it off or like cut it off?
He goes to the doctor's office. The doctor says, "Okay, this is going to take a while to fix," and he says, "I don't have the time. And I don't want to spend the next 12 months in physical therapy trying to put back an inch on my finger." And so he just cuts it off himself.
Oh, Jesus. That was a hard scene to watch.
Yeah. But the biggest problem that Tommy is facing is not losing that finger, but the hotshot young lawyer who wasn't supposed to arrive. He called his boss, Monty, and he said, "We need the old guy to come back down here and help us brush this under the rug." But instead, Monty's bosses bring in someone who's looking for a scapegoat, someone who they can blame, and they focus on Tommy because Tommy is, like I said, very un-PC, unapologetic for what he does. However, he is necessary. So that's where you have John Hamm's character, Monty, trying to defend him. Tommy's trying to defend himself. And then you have the young shot lawyer who's not 100% going to go after him, but it does look like she doesn't like him.
Is it Rebecca Falcone that you're talking about as the lawyer?
Yes, Falcone. It's how she pronounces it.
Yeah, this is kind of her first really big show. She's going to have a recurring role in it. But you talked a little bit about the daughter, and I wanted to talk about her because a lot of people online have been talking about her storyline in general. The actual actress is 27 years old in real life, but she's playing a 17-year-old?
Right. So when I talked about this being, I would say this is the negative part of the show, because all that other stuff I'm actually very interested in, and I would say is a compelling watch. Even if you're a lot of the stuff that Tommy prescribes to and talks about, like he tries to talk about the benefits of smoking or drinking, or tries to downplay their negative side effects.
Right.
And you can kind of put up with that because of Billy Bob Thornton's acting, and also because of, I guess, Tommy's storyline with the oil rigs. That's pretty interesting stuff. I think that's why Boomtown was so good. But the sitcom part of it, where Tommy is stuck with his ex-wife now because she's come in the third episode and just shown up in Texas, and now she's living with him. They both have feelings for each other still, even though she's technically married to some other rich dude.
And this is Ali Larter, right?
Ali Larter.
Angela, okay.
They have their impulsive daughter that you just mentioned. Her name is Ainsley, right? I believe it's
Ainsley Norris. Yeah.
And she is very open about her sexuality with her parents, which I think is the thing that upsets most viewers.
Receive backlash, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, and their son, again, Cooper, doesn't live with them, but he is having scenes with Tommy where they're talking stuff out, and it's just a very sitcom-y feel to the way that the jokes are delivered, and him rolling his eyes when his daughter says stuff. Cooper's storyline, I do want to concentrate on that real quick, because he has the most potential to grow as a character. And I think he might even be my favorite character over Tommy, because he actually will. You can already tell there's the steps. The first episode, he's the worm of the grunt group, or he's the worm of the patch group, so technically the grunt.
Right.
And they are making fun of him from everything that he's doing. Michael Peña's doing a great job, kind of playing back to his role in the one with Jake Gyllenhaal. That movie.
Oh, End of Watch.
End of Watch. I'm getting the same feel from him from that to this. And Tommy is getting close to his crew, and even though they're hazing him relentlessly, he's also learning Spanish, and he's getting closer, and then they die. It comes out of nowhere.
End of the first episode.
Very effective. I like the beginning of the first episode, the end of the first episode. Really, really good. In the second episode, instead of having PTSD like some shows would do, and then having like Tommy like not be able to he wants to go right back in to another crew, even though a lot of their family members are also working there and will blame him as the worm. So he joins up with this other crew, and they go through the same day that he had gone through with his first crew,
right,
where they go to the same coffee house at the very beginning, and he goes to one of the oil rigs, and they're doing work together, and he's being threatened. His life is being threatened because everybody blames him, and at the same time, he wants to prove himself even more now.
So is this like a polar opposite from the first episode? Because like you said, in the first episode, he's starting to kind of connect with this different group, and in the second episode, these people, they're blaming him for the death, and it's like just bad to watch.
He's definitely still naive, and he's got like the green ears or whatever, I don't know, when you're new to things,
yeah.
But he's not taking as much bullshit as he did the first time. And he's also taking responsibility to a certain extent. He fights the person who tries to hurt him, one of their cousins, the people who died. And then he also goes to their memorial service that's being held at their house. And he talks to the baby mama of the youngest one who passed away, who I think he'll probably end up with, which is kind of messed up. But yeah, his storyline is really good. The comedy is really good. John Hamm is really good, even though they reduce him to kind of just speaking on the phone to Tommy in most of his
it seemed like it was
scenes.
just every single scene.
It was for the first two episodes. In the third episode, he has like a golfing scene. Both Tommy and Monty used to work together even closer. I think that Tommy ended up having to be like his underling because he didn't have the trust fund that Monty had. However, I think that like if I were to make a prediction, because their tie is so strong right now and Monty is the one protecting him, I think that bridge is going to burn by the end of the season. There's going to be some fallout where Monty saves the day, but I think that relationship will become very strained because right now it is so tight. All of that fun drama to watch, but oh my God, does Sheridan have his demons? People get mad at Tarantino for his foot fetish, right? But this is more creepy and more in your face about it because every woman in this show is a sex object. Ali Larter's Angela character alone brings enough everyone look at my tits and flirty energy to fill 3 shows over. But all of the women are either presented as waitresses, as pampered trophy wives, as widowed baby mamas, or 17-year-old daughters that they spend half of every episode sexualizing. Like she would walk in, she's sunbathing outside, and then she's asking for like coconut oil. And then because they don't have coconut oil, she like starts spreading like Crisco on her body. Like it's so weird. Why not just write her as 18?
Yeah, right.
Like, honestly, that feels like they did that on purpose just to trigger people again with the anti-PC rhetoric. And it does take away from the show because it's just so boring if you're waiting for like actual drama to happen.
I was going to keep it until the end, but yes, huge controversy around the portrayal of female characters. NPR called the women characters empty caricatures. If there was a female character drawn as well as Tommy, it would transform from an entertaining TV drama to a captivating classic. Entertainment Weekly said that does Taylor Sheridan's drama hate women? Even The Guardian, which gave the series 3 out of 5 stars, a mixed review, called its ad towards women repellent.
Well, honestly, if you look at all his shows, he's really bad at writing women. Even in 1883, I really loved that first episode. I thought he wrote that character. You said her name
Isabel
already.
May. That
Yes,
was the
but
person
who does she play?
Elsa Dutton? Is that her name?
Yes, the Dutton lady. She was great in the first couple episodes. Then she just randomly falls in love with this guy, and her character arc takes a complete left turn, and it just ruins it. And it makes even the series worse by the end of it. I was sad when that happened. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to write all these kind of like flirty characters, and then at the end give you like, oh, but we do have this really strong female lead in the lawyer. But even the lawyer is quickly reduced into like a common, really bad trope because she's supposed to be the feminist, cutthroat attorney, environmentalist. She's sticking up for all the good initiatives that Tommy is kind of just dismissive of, but she's quickly shown to be afraid of snakes. So she freezes up. She can't handle the environment. She's too sensitive. She gets really upset when he calls her a lady. She's incapable of arguing his bulletproof argument that oil is actually better than wind and solar, just like his argument that smoking actually doesn't kill anyone with lung cancer because they have smoking in Japan and there's not that much lung cancer there. So what's really killing people is sugar. It's just sad because if they had given her even, I guess, better arguments or to be smarter, to combat him a little bit. But Tommy is one of those characters who is treated like he's the victim for everything, but then shown from his perspective as like he's really the hero.
I was going to say, is he right about everything?
He's presented in the show, but the show is also being like made fun of because it's almost like an ad for Marlboro or for Ford, where they're really trying to promote a lot of his bullshit rhetoric in the third episode about how wind and solar were bullshit, alternative energy sources. You can look up the data for sure. When people say that this company is net zero, like it's not creating any sort of negative impact, that is their investment into clean energy that's trying to offset. But there's no such thing as offsetting. And that part is true. But what's not true is when he starts going on about how once the windmill is created, then it won't have enough energy in however many years that it's out there to make up for the amount of energy that was used to create it with oil. That's bullshit. And they didn't even I don't know. It's such a talking point that's being like thrown in there and not even pushed up back against.
Well, talking about like the facts, I listened to the first 2 episodes of Boomtown, and I actually have a game here, 3 Truths and 1 Lie. This is all stuff I learned about the first episode, and it was really talking about the Permian Basin, where the podcast is set. It's largely in Texas. It's about the history of this place and how oil really affected it. It had like a huge rise and fall, and I wanted to see if you could guess what the fake fact was.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is the Permian Basin is where Buzz Bissinger wrote the book Friday Night Lights. The second one is since 2016, crashes on the Permian Basin are up 47%. The third one is the Permian Basin is huge, about the size of Utah. And the last one is the epicenter of fossil fuel activity is in the Permian Basin.
The last one.
That's actually true. The one that was fake was since 2016, crashes on the Permian Basin are up 47%. It's actually.
When you say crashes?
Yeah, crashes, like car crashes.
Oh, I thought you meant like it was up from a crash in like oil amount, because they spend a lot of this show talking about how expensive oil is.
Yeah.
And how they don't want to like invest in a rig when oil is down. So like I thought you were talking about that type of crashes.
No, from what I've learned about the Permian Basin, it is incredibly dangerous. It's actually up 67% and fatalities have doubled. You have gruesome stories about the dangerous area, 50,000 truck barrels through a day and night, and drivers use amphetamines to stay awake and the road is crumbling from overuse.
That I feel is relatively shown here. Like we do have those people die in the first scene. It's shown as a very dangerous job. And I certainly wouldn't want, but again, they're also saying people who take this are sometimes even felons, but they're offered the chance at making 6 figures.
Right.
And so like they'll stay up all night doing whatever they possibly can not to lose that job, because it's kind of like the gold standard if you're stuck in that position.
So when you are comparing this to other Taylor Sheridan shows, Landman, and we mentioned all the other ones earlier, is this in the upper tier, the lower tier? Is it somewhere in the middle?
It's somewhere in the middle. Had they concentrated mostly on Tommy's storyline, or not Tommy's story, Cooper's storyline, you could even get rid of Tommy. You could even get rid of, as long as you get rid of his family at the same time, except for Cooper.
So just focused on Cooper.
If it had just been Cooper, you'd see this first day. It would have been sort of like the first episode of Michael, whatever his face is, his show, The Shield.
Michael Chiklis.
Yeah, where like it's showing you a group of individuals who are a team, and then something drastically crazy happens at the end that you would not expect. Like, that was a great shock. If you showed Cooper's development and him getting hazed and him getting close to them, it would have been a true heartbreaker first episode. And then you would have had, I guess I feel like with this cast, you could have still used a bunch of them, but like just had them as different types of characters. Like Demi Moore is doing nothing. She's swimming in the background of John Hamm's scenes. And
you barely talked about her.
She's just playing the wife. Again, she's no woman is represented well, so she really doesn't get any other screen time than just kind of in a bathing suit.
What would you give the show out of 10?
6 out of 10 because the oil stuff is fun. It's beautiful in a way, seeing the oil. I feel like it's different enough too. And if it was me, I wouldn't have known how to adapt this from a podcast or. Was Boomtown before it was a podcast something else?
No, but Boomtown did come out in 2019, so it was a little while ago.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have been able to even do what Sheridan has done. I just feel like make the daughter 18, lower down Angela's like libido, and maybe concentrate way less on the daughter's boyfriend. And I just feel like maybe they just don't know exactly where they wanted to go, so that was all gap filler type stuff before they could, so that they could spread it out over the course of 10
episodes.
10 episodes.
Yeah, it has an 8.2 on IMDb, around 4,000 reviews, 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 65% audience score. Hollywood Reporter said Sheridan makes testosterone-fueled soap operas for people who would like to pretend they're too macho to watch soap operas, and this one features Billy Bob Thornton in fine form. But however, the viewership for this thing has been great. It debuted at 5.2 million viewers and is the biggest global series launch on Paramount Plus in 2 years, secured the top spot for a U.S. premiere in Paramount Plus's history within the first 3 days, and joined Sheridan's other 2 titles, Tulsa King in 1923, as the top 3 biggest season launches in Paramount Plus's history. But this, I think, is even more stunning because Yellowstone's final 6 episodes, after almost 2 years of being off the air, just aired their 2-episode premiere 4 days prior, and that did not get the same type of viewership that this did. It reminds me, though, of Kurt Sutter, because you mentioned The Shield earlier. It reminds me of The Shield because The Shield aired its final season premiere on September 2nd, 2008, and the next day, Sons of Anarchy, that's a Taylor Sheridan connection, aired the pilot on FX, just like when the series finale of The Shield aired on November 25th, 2008, the day before the first season finale of Sons of Anarchy. So it's kind of like the same thing where you have 2 pretty big shows made by the same creator on the same type of network. However,
yes, but then the Kurt Sutter thing is the same thing that happens with Taylor Sheridan. What was his show right after Sons of Anarchy before he did At Mayans MC?
I think it was The Bastard Executioner.
It was The Bastard Executioner, and that bomb. That was a horrible show, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what happens when you just give too much license to someone who's proven themselves as a very good writer and creator of a television show, but then they get too much latitude, and then they're expected to jump into a genre and a field, and really just they don't have the capability of doing it all on their own.
He did write this whole entire series, and he directed the first 2 episodes.
Yes, but this series has its flaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a good series in it. It's just not, like, there's too much anti-PC stuff. Like, it's like, I'm not here preaching like, oh, you have to be against cigarettes and stuff, but it feels like it's taking away from just getting us through scenes with him just getting mad at the fact that people these days are living different lives.
That does reflect some comments that Taylor Sheridan has made before.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, he speaks through his characters. I get that. But like the whole thing about alternative energy and saying that like wind and solar are pointless because oil's the way to go. That's some stupid fact. That's not true. And I also think that I'm surprised that the women, while they were reading, their lines?
Every single one, Ali Larder, even the daughter, all of them said that they felt like when they were reading their roles, they felt like they were strong, independent women for the show. But every other review and audience member has said the complete opposite. So
they're definitely confident, and they're definitely, but they're all the same. You know, they're all just obsessed with sex and getting control. Even the waitress at the cafe that they go to, I did find that funny, that she, everybody goes to the same cafe in the morning, and then she takes a longer time when asked to do anything but black coffee. And so, like, on his new crew, Cooper's new crew, because he made the mistake of ordering a latte in the first episode. That's when the boss of the new crew ordered something really like with a ton of milk and stuff in it, so that like it took a really long time, but he didn't give a fuck. Like, he stood outside and started yelling at the other truck drivers. so that was a fun callback to the first episode. I am sad that Michael Pena's character died, because he is just a joke monster. Like, that guy has comic delivery timing of a genius, and you like, part of me wanted him to survive the blast.
This is
would have been
it wouldn't have. I mean, I know that it was incredibly hot when they were filming, but also
so did they do that like actual blow up thing? Like, how did they do
I
that?
think so. It was like a long shoot. It was a 5-month shoot in Texas.
Okay. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.